Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Grant and Joe Hoyt. Joe is here to talk to us about the Cowboys training camp. Technically, the Cowboys are back. Do we still call it training camp, Joe, when they're not in Oxnard anymore?
Yeah, the Oxnard iteration of training camp has concluded, but this is the training camp grind doesn't end. That's one thing Brian Schottenheimer has hammered home with his players.
Wow,
I
that's
say that
good to know.
I say that kind of dramatically to say, yeah, they're back in Frisco.
Yeah, they're back in Frisco. Yes, they are.
Phase
Training-
1, California. Phase 2, Frisco. It's very simple.
Phase 3, the moon.
That's not.
Who knows?
It's not camp if you're staying in your own bed at night. Okay, that's not camp. That might have been the kind of
That's
camp
day
that
camp.
you did.
That's day camp.
That's what you did. Day camp. He sent little Evan down to day camp, brought him back home every night because he cried
right.
too much. So Joe, we've got some raging battles going on, but they're all for backup spots for the most part, except for maybe, cornerback and maybe at linebacker, what they're going to do there. And it seems to me that let's start with those two. I know everybody wants to talk about Joe Milton too. And I have to say he looked terrific, in that, game the other night. That might've been the best he's ever looked in a regular season game or not. He did have a couple of big games before he got to the Cowboys, but at any rate, let's talk about at middle linebacker and at cornerback and what you see happening as we go forward from here.
Yeah, let's start with middle linebacker. I think, Jayshon Barham right now is the hot name that everyone wants to talk about for good reason. He's looked really good. He cracked the starting rotation 3 days into training camp. Every time he's hit the field, he's impressed. Against Arizona, he immediately made an impact and looked like a guy that I think inevitably will be the starting middle linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, does that mean he's going to do it week 1? I still don't think so. I think that's going to be D. Winters and DeMarvion Overshown to start. I think D. Winters is kind of the forgotten man, and I think that he's done a good job. But I do think that you'll see Jayshon Barham rotating in, especially in sub packages, where he bounces off to the edge and gives Christian Parker another layer for his disguises. And then at corner, I think it's been kind of like a battle that's been not a battle that we haven't really focused on, but it is a battle. And that's Cowboys Duran versus Savone Revel. And I think right now, it's Savone Revel has had a lot of, he probably had the best camp of any corner in terms of where he started and where he finished. He looks like a guy that could be a potential elite man cover corner. He's still kind of getting his feet wet with some zone coverage stuff. He still gets a little handsy sometimes in terms of potential holdings, but Cowboys Duran has been steady. Cowboys Duran has been the consistent guy, that his high floor kind of guy that you like. I think week 1, you're probably going to see more Cowboys Duran than Savone Revel, but kind of with the Jayshon Barham situation, I do wonder when Savone Revel eventually takes the reins for good. So a lot of interesting, young, exciting guys they have. I think they kind of rely on consistency heading into week 1 against the Giants, but that's something to keep an eye on as we go throughout the season for sure.
No question about it. So let's get back to Barham here and talk about that situation, because DeMarvion Overshown was saying all along he wanted to be the green dot guy, right? And so so let me ask you this: is it because Barham had just looked so good, or Overshown has not looked as good, or do we feel like some of us have said all along that you kind of like Overshown more in a weak side linebacker role? What do you think has happened here?
Yeah, I think ultimately the reason why he'll eventually go to weak side is because he's got a motor that, he's 0 to 60 is incredibly fast, but I think he wants to go 0 to 60. I think he wants to hit, he wants to fly around, and I think the weak side position ultimately favors that for DeMarvion Overshown more. Jayshon Barham, as a guy who also only was a hybrid middle linebacker last year in Michigan, he played both on the edge and at middle linebacker. He's got this really smooth feel for how to time up things and the tempo required to be a middle linebacker, to be, the combination of both being physical and patient. It's funny, I think someone called him a chaos backer because he's so physical and he messes things up. I call him a controlled chaos backer, though, because he's still under control when he's flying around. He understands how to be smooth. He's very fluid. He's physical when he needs to be. He's honestly kind of acrobatic when he needs to be. You saw a couple contortionist-like run fits from him against Arizona that were very impressive. I think that this is someone that ultimately fits more of a middle linebacker mold than DeMarvion Overshown. And here's the thing, too, with Jayshon Barham. D. Winters and DeMarvion Overshown are both in contract years. These are guys that are not guarantees to come back next year. You kind of need to find a future of middle linebacker, and I think Jayshon Barham inevitably will be that.
That's interesting. Have you had any kind of decent conversation with Barham yet?
We finally had a chance to talk to him yesterday, and just a little bit of background. That was newsworthy that he talked because, I was the first guy that tried to talk with him at training camp. And I'd been told before trying to talk to him that, hey, this is a guy that doesn't like to talk. He's very focused on business, doesn't believe that talking serves him well in terms of trying to start for the Dallas Cowboys, which is his ultimate mission. But I went to go talk to him because of how quiet he was. He said, hey, nice to meet you. No, I will not do an interview. I asked him follow up questions and he just gave me the silent treatment as I walked. And that ended up being something that replicated with other reporters and other PR members trying to get him to talk. And he hadn't talked until yesterday. Eventually, I think, some of the higher ups got involved and said, hey, Jay Sean, it's NFL rules, by the way, when the regular season starts, that you have to be open to the media. Otherwise, you'll be open to a fine, as we saw with Marshawn Lynch years ago saying, hey, I'm just here so I won't get fined. So Jayshon Barham, someone got in his ear, and yesterday he finally talked to the media. And here's the funny thing: he's a good interview. Like, he said that I asked him about, hey, you've been coaches say you're very inquisitive, right? That you asked a lot of questions. How has that helped you? And he goes, yeah, well, the same way it helps you guys to do your job to ask me questions. It gives me information and makes me better at doing what I need to do for my job. And I was like, see, that's a good response, Jay Sean. You should have talked to us the whole time. So I think that this is someone who's so businesslike and so serious that I think a lot of people around the Cowboys respect it for sure.
Okay. Well, I got no problem with that. If a guy doesn't want to talk, he doesn't have to talk as far as I'm concerned. But then again, I'm not in there in the locker room every day like you are. It only makes your jobs tougher.
I'll say this on that: if you're the starting middle linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, you got to answer questions.
Yeah,
It just comes with the territory.
it does seemingly do that, doesn't it? All right, let's talk about Joe Milton now and about what he's been able to do and how he has looked so far. How do you assess what Joe's done so far? Is it more flash, which he has certainly shown a lot of that in the past? He's got tremendous physical ability. I don't think anybody would question any of that. He might be the most athletic quarterback in the entire NFL for all the things he can do. But is it a flash, or are you starting to see some of the consistency that obviously you would want from a guy playing that position?
Yeah, no, I'm seeing it, to be honest with you. And I think when it comes to Joe Milton, this is a quarterback that was built in a lab. Like, he has literally every single physical attribute you want. He could throw the ball 85 yards. As Brian Schottenheimer said, cool, that could win you some teddy bears at the carnival with how fast you can throw and how far you can throw. But it takes more than that. And he's got the mobility. And I think one thing we saw last year a lot was I call it almost like the I'm better than you in high school effect for quarterbacks, where it's like, hey, I'm going to drop back, and if my first read's not there, I'm just going to tuck in and run and show my athleticism. And I think that got him into trouble a lot during last preseason, because then once that was taken away, and once those gaps that looked really big were filled by really fast linebackers, and he kind of had to freak out a little bit, I think it definitely affected him. And this year, we talked to him yesterday. I'm writing about it today. He took a look in the mirror and said, there's things where I need to improve. Like, I can't just be the big, athletic, strong arm quarterback. I have to be a true quarterback. And we've seen it all training camp. The times where he would run last year, you saw a great example against Arizona. There was a point on that opening drive, or the first touchdown drive, where he could have, he dropped back. His first read wasn't there, and he could have ran forward and probably got 5-6 yards. It would have been okay. Instead, he runs forward, escapes the pocket left, finds Malik Davis with a touch throw, which is probably the biggest impressive thing in terms of his ability to throttle down that big arm. And it's an easy touchdown for Malik Davis. And I think the things you've seen from him show that there's been development. And it's something we didn't necessarily see with Trey Lance, for example, right? Because it's not easy. It's not easy for a strong, athletic, fast quarterback to throttle down, to do different arm angles, to trust his ability to be patient. He even joked that, hey, I had a daughter, and that's taught me I got to be a lot more patient. If I had a son, maybe I would still be a little hot-headed and not as patient. He looks the part. I think they walked into this quarterback 2 battle thinking Sam Howell was going to be the guy. They gave Garrettine Muddy for that to happen. And right now, Joe Milton's making that a lot tougher than I think they imagined.
So let me ask you this about Joe, because this is kind of an issue I've had for several years now. Why not put in a little sub package for him instead of him on the sideline waiting for Dak to get hurt? Why not put a little sub package in where he goes in for 2 plays, two no huddle plays, get in, let him do a little something. It doesn't have to be a wildcat play because he's better than that. To me, that was the failure of the wildcat was that nobody was ever throwing the ball. Everybody was just running it all the time. Why isn't that a possibility for the Cowboys?
Because I think what happens when you have quarterback sub packages or stuff like that is you're taking your starter out of a flow state. And that's such a big thing for starting quarterbacks. They need to be in the groove. They need to be in rhythm. And realistically, I think you're signaling every time you do that. I think that it's the same reason why, like, going into training camp, I said Savone Rebel needs to get good at zone coverage. Has to. Otherwise, if his only ability is man coverage, then every time he's on the field, you are signaling to opposing quarterbacks, hey, here comes man coverage, because Savone Rebel can't cover in zone. He's obviously improved in that area and put himself in the conversation to start for a good reason. But I think if you signal, hey, here comes Joe Milton, there's a few things that are happening. The quarterback run has an increased possibility. The deep ball had a increased possibility. And I just don't think that does anyone really a good service to kind of have a little bit here and a little bit there. It's kind of a separation, in a master of none situation there. So the one thing I'll say on that, though, he's really good at the tush push. He's really, really good at that. I think that he might have a spot on game day as the quarterback too over Sam Howell if they keep 3 quarterbacks instead of him being the emergency quarterback, simply because if it's 4th and 1, I think you're going to, same way with Jalen Hurts, you're going to bet a lot on Joe Milton making that.
Joe, you bail yourself out there because anytime you disagree with me, you lose points. And so you bail yourself out the end by saying they can bring him in for the tush push. That was good. Good job. I get what you're saying, and I understand the whole thing about flow and the rest of that kind of stuff. But you don't want Dak. We want Dak Prescott running the ball only when he's trying to get away from something, right? Not when he's just taking off. That's the problem with that kind of thing. And so when your quarterback is becoming more and more one-dimensional, I think you got to think about other options. But I get it. I understand what you're saying here.
But if he comes in, you're telling people he's going to run the ball, Kevin.
No, I just said this is not a classic wildcat where it's just like that's all they do is run the ball. Joe Milton presents options.
You just said we only want Dak running when he's running away from people. You're talking about designed run plays for the quarterback, whether it's a direct snap to the wildcat or he's going to take off and run.
I'm saying it's a 50-50 proposition. That's what you want the defense to think, that he might run, but he also might throw the ball. We're going to load up here for him to run, and then he's going to toss it over the line of scrimmage, and there we go.
Yeah, so I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to side with Joe here.
Evan,
thank you, Evan.
Evan, a big mistake on your part. You've lost points as well, Evan, and you were starting with a negative already. So,
Evan, I give you points. How about that? You may have lost points from Kevin. I'm giving you my points.
When did this become around the horn?
Joe only has half points, so that's the thing. Joe's only giving out half points. That's the issue with there.
I listen. I come from a background where a team never had a quarterback, and when you never had a quarterback, you often had 2 quarterbacks, and so Dak's a quarterback here. He has flaws in the game, and unless it's an absolutely desperate situation, I don't see a reason why you would trick it up with him.
Yeah, all right. That's because you're not as imaginative as I am. You're not. Your brain is just not leaking out your ears because you're so bright with everything that's going on.
Your brain is definitely leaking these days.
It is.
You gotta get that checked out, Kevin.
It's been leaking now for about 30 years, I think, frankly. All right, Joe, is there anything else we need to know about? Anything else that's a burning issue for you with these Cowboys?
So let me ask. I want to ask one question here, Joe, real quick. Look, I mean, as Cowboy camp kind of gets divided into the sleepaway camp portion in Oxnard and the day camp portion in Frisco, and we've now broken that. What's your biggest takeaway about this team? Like, what from those first 2 preseason games and the portion of camp do you say, okay, this is where I think the Dallas Cowboys are?
Yeah, I think someone taught me a while ago in terms of beat reporting is like you should, obviously every day is different, right? But you should kind of have like a central theme in mind for an entire season that you kind of try not to stray away too much from that, because this is the most important thing. And my central theme kind of going into this season was, can a first-year defensive coordinator at 34 years old with a completely remodeled defense minus one or two guys, can he do it? Can it work? Can they fix the same issues that they had last year that made them the worst defense in the NFL in the last 5 years? And I'm seeing it. I saw it on a daily basis in terms of communication, in terms of alignment. I think the biggest testament to how good Christian Parker has been as a teacher and his staff, from what they've been able to do, is look how on point and how cohesive that defense looks in the second half of these preseason games, the last 2 weeks. These are guys that are not going to be on the roster for a lot of them. There's the guys that are barely fighting for backup spots or special teams, and they're playing in sync. They're playing in unison. They're communicating. They're all on the same page. This is something that couldn't happen with the starting defense for the Dallas Cowboys in Week 16 last year, and now these backups are doing it in the preseason. So I think my big takeaway coming out of this is I'm buying stock in Christian Parker that was already high. I'm buying it still. And I think if this can continue, this is a 10, 11, 12 win team that with the offense that they have, if they can stay healthy. I still think it's a long road to go until we're saying, hey, this could be a Super Bowl contender. I'm definitely in pen right now, putting them as a playoff team. I think that they're that good on offense, and I think the defense is going to be the floor for the defense is going to be high enough that I think they're going to have a lot of success this season.
When you say the floor for the defense is going to be high enough, is it a middle of the pack defense?
I think right now I would estimate a top 15 to top 12 defense. I still think they lack firepower in terms of the ceiling, conversely. But here's the other kind of the kicker with that. I believe Jerry Jones when he says that they're willing to trade a first round pick next year to add a guy at the deadline this time around, just like they did with Quinnen Williams. If you tell me that, hey, the secondary looks good, the linebackers are flowing, but to be honest with you, we're just not getting enough pass rush, and they go out and trade for Josh Sweat, or, if they decide to change their mind on the medicals with Max Crosby and the Raiders are really bad and they're willing to give him up for less of a price, I think that this defense could then increase that ceiling too. And then I wouldn't rule out that possibility.
That's great stuff, Joe. Thanks.
I'm kind of bullish on them, to be honest. I mean, on this team, to be honest, in terms of making the playoffs. I feel pretty confident about that.
Wow, pretty confident. That's strong. That's stronger than anything Kevin has ever said.
There you go. I think the issue for them has been pretty much if they could just get a league average defense that the offense is good enough, they could be a playoff team. Now, obviously,
that was the case last year, right? I mean, the offense was good enough if they had just been league average, or even towards the bottom of the league average, like in the top 15 to 20. That defense would have been that team would have gotten to the playoffs.
The defense was awful. I think the thing that frightens some people away from making that prediction is that how do you go from 7 wins to 12 wins? Well, you do in the NFL. It happens all the time. There's not usually you don't have incremental improvements a lot of times. So sometimes you do see 4 or 5 win difference. And teams going the other way for that matter. Going from like I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle drop back again. I mean, are you really counting on Sam Darnold to do that 2 years in a row? So I think that it's a very volatile marketplace in the NFL, and I do think the Cowboys have the potential to do that too. All right, Joe.
I mean, on that note, one little note on that note too. Like, I agree with you, Kevin, because and that's why I have the caveat about them going to being a Super Bowl contender. I think it's easy to jump from 7 to 10 to 7 to 11 to go from mid to good to being a really good team. To get to the great factor, though, that is something that I don't know if they have that capability yet.
Well, you got to get that big run, and then you're right. That's what they do. The most important thing you can have is a pass rush, and we don't know that they have a pass rush yet. They might have one. They might be okay. You need to have a really good pressure. I mean, the Seahawks went a long way with that defense last year as well. So they're not in that league yet, and I do think that we'll have to make a move like that. And it's interesting that when Jerry has talked about it, that Jerry's aggressive and he likes to make moves, but he's also in these later years more careful. And I think he has to really believe that the team is 1 or 2 players away before he's willing to make that kind of move. And I think he does.
I think he believes it.
Yeah, I think he does too. Well, he's always was an easy sell, but I think he has become more cautious here in his old age and not But back in the day, because he and Jimmy had success selling those first round draft picks, and flipping those all. Then he tried to do it after Jimmy left, and it was a disaster. If you want to go back and look why they were not any good after Jimmy left, it wasn't so much the coaching, and that was a factor. The biggest factor was the talent wasn't there anymore. They had just when you don't have first round draft picks, you're going to struggle. So that was the issue back then. Well, he got more cautious as time has gone by, and good for him. He needed to do that, but now is the time to buy. I think.
Yeah, I
This
think
is a
if there's
buy
one
tip.
thing I'm hung up on what you said, Joe, it's like how willing Jerry will actually be to deal a first round pick. That's the one thing that I'm hung up on. The one other thing that kind of has like stuck with me is on the discussion about Barham and Overshone. So are we saying that Overshone it was just miscast as a middle linebacker? Do you
I think he
believe that
was.
he'll be an asset as an outside linebacker?
Yeah, I think I just think he's more of an outside weak side linebacker. And here's the thing too with this defense. We talk weak side, Mike, all that stuff, right? And realistically, for a 3-4 defense, they're the same position, right? I mean, obviously one is going to be more strong side, so that means more to the tight end side, right? But they're lined up next to each other on the inside. They're two inside linebackers. And I think what I'm saying more is not the idea of, hey, DeMarvin Overshown needs to be playing on the weak side because, his physical attributes are there. What I'm saying is I think it requires more of a combination of a guy who can fly around and a guy who's a little bit more controlled. A guy that can take on fullbacks while a weak side linebacker can go backside, sprint through the gap, and make a play. And I think when you have D. Winters and DeMarvin Overshown, two very speedy fly around guys, I don't think that the combination is as perfect as it'll be with Jayshon Barham and one of those two there. That's why, to be honest, when Jayshon Barham is rotated in, it's mostly been, hey, I'm gonna tap DeMarvion here. D, you're gonna be my weak side linebacker on this one. Or hey, I'm gonna tap in D Winters DeMarvion. You're gonna be my weak side linebacker on this. Jason Barham's not playing the weak side linebacker for them. He'll rotate down to the edge sometimes because he has that versatile skill set. But it's more about the mentality and the way they play versus the fact that one's a total weak side linebacker and one is a total Mike linebacker.
The
All
last
right.
thing for me, Joe, is I mean,
Last thing, we tried to get out of here 5 minutes ago, Evan, and you just keep asking questions.
I'm inquisitive, I'm curious, and not judgmental, Kevin. As like unlike you, assigning and taking away points. The one thing, Joe, is you painted a pretty rosy picture.
For sure.
Outside of an injury, and we've seen how Cowboy seasons have gone sideways with an injury. What is your biggest concern right now?
Yeah, pass rush for sure. Do they have one? They believe in this group pass rush committee, and you saw it work in Denver where BT Jordan was last year, their pass rush consultant. But also they had Nick Benito, who is a pretty darn good pass rusher on his own. And I think that that's something that we kind of underestimate a little bit is who's going to be that guy. You think maybe Donovan Azaraki could take a step. Rashawn Gary could maybe get 7 sacks for you. But who has that high end potential? I'm not sure if it's on the roster right now. And then I do think with corner, they're pretty thin. I do think they're one injury away from it getting pretty precarious. And you have guys that have been injury prone. Like Savone Revel was a guy that now he's healthy, but shoot, I mean, a year ago, he was still recovering from a torn ACL. Deron Bland has had back-to-back foot surgeries, and he looks healthy. The old, from just a physical, athletic, quick starting standpoint, stop and go. He looks like the Deron Bland before the foot injury, the
But
first one. So
when
that's
a guy
encouraging.
has a foot that size, as we've heard on SportsDay Insider already,
Big foot, man.
issue. It's hard to get a shoe to fit him.
For sure. Bigfoot comes with big problems sometimes, right? And, so I think they're one injury away there from that being nerve wracking. And I'll say this too. The George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb combo was incredible last year, right? Can they replicate it? Was this an offense last year, by the way, that was a top 10 offense because they had to throw the ball a lot and they had a lot of time to play because the defense was so bad, right? And they were always trying to score and they're playing soft coverages. That's one other factor that kind of is in my head. I think that they have the ability to still replicate that, but you still have to see it. So those are my concerns. Those are the potential pitfalls. But to be honest, that's way less questions than I envisioned going into training camp.
Yeah, a lot fewer questions than there were last year, that's for sure. All right, Joe. That's going to do it for the Cowboys segment of our podcast. We appreciate Joe coming on with us. Does a great job. And Joe, I'm hoping that you hold up to this heat after being out in lovely California all this time.
How many points did I get though? That's my
Joe,
big question.
you
Joe,
were
you-
magnificent.
We finished way ahead, Joe. That was good.
You
That
were
was good.
you were magnificent. Now, look, there weren't any references to Kojak, Julia Roberts. Well, you did get in a Bigfoot Bland reference.
Yeah.
I did.
That's good. That's good. The Bigfoot Bland is always good.
And there were no celebrities. There was no celebrity talk. But other than that, this was a home run.
You gotta stick to what you know, and but I will say shout out to Dolly Parton, the absolute legend.
We didn't even bring that up about Dolly Parton. Yeah, that's
No, we're going to bring up Dolly Parton before we get out of the whole show. But go ahead, Joe. Before
Do you know what my favorite Dolly Parton song is though?
What's that?
Eugene, Oregon. Check it out. Go Ducks. All right, I'm done.
All right, there goes Joe. So now we have to talk about the Rangers. They're like, the good ship Ranger is like this big boat, and you plug one leak and then something else leaks. They start to hit a little bit now, and then all of a sudden your ace looks like he's about 58 instead of 38. Gives up 6 freaking runs in the first inning. Was that a first for Jacob deGrom?
Yeah, it's the worst inning of his life. But listen, I mean, he gave up 5 hits in that inning, and the average exit velocity was 72 miles an hour. It was a weird inning. The problem on Tuesday night with Jacob deGrom was that I think that was the worst slider he's had in his life. He did not get a swing and miss on his slider on Tuesday night. It's the first time in his career he has not gotten a swing and miss on his slider. He called it absolutely terrible, non-competitive. And I think that was what angered him most about his outing. Because without that pitch, you're eliminating something. And when you're throwing the slider, you're behind in the counts. And it was a recipe for disaster. And it's just unfortunate. And it is the story of the Rangers this year, right? The night before they come out and they win 11-2. Best offensive run production they've had all year. The next night they come out and they give up 11. It is from one extreme to the exact identical extreme with this team, week after week and series after series. Go back to last week when they opened the home series against Washington. They shut the Nationals out 6-0 or 5-0 the first night. Come back the next night and lose 6-0. And whether it's home versus road splits or score first versus opponents scoring first, they are like diametric opposites in terms of record, which is what you end up with when you've got a 500 club. It's just a weird way to get there.
But they always find a way to get there, don't they? To me, it's like I wrote the other day, it's like a cat you drop a cat, it always lands on its feet. The Rangers will always get to 500. Doesn't matter what, good or bad, whatever happens, they'll do whatever it takes to get back to 500.
How many times have you dropped a cat? What are you doing over there?
Have you never heard that expression?
Don't come to my house with our cats and start picking them up and dropping them to see if this is actually accurate.
I'll tell you what I'll do with your cats. I'll take your cats and I will fling them from the top of your little brownstone there, and we'll see what happens to them.
I don't think Gina would like that very much.
No, I don't want people to think I'm abusive to cats. I'm fine.
Kevin
with cats.
hates cats.
Oh, I'm fine with cats. They freak me out a little bit, but I'm fine with cats.
They're weird creatures, but I've come to make my peace with the cats.
Yeah, well, good for you. Speaking of cats, did you know that that in New York, the Carnegie Deli's coming back?
That was a really bad segue.
Are you kidding? That was a classic segue. Katz's. We have Katz's Deli, and
I
now
got
we've
it.
got Carnegie.
It took me, who has a lot of Katz's in their lives, a while to get from Katz to Carnegie. But yes, I did read that. Gina's very excited about that. I can't wait. I actually preferred going to the Carnegie over Katz's back in the day, but we'll see what these reiterations come like. Carnegie still makes corned beef. Like if you go to Central Market and buy corned beef or pastrami, It's
Yeah.
coming from the Carnegie from the Carnegie Company.
See, what I would like better is if Carnegie came here to Dallas and had a deli here. How great would that be?
When I was in Houston at the end of July, I talked to the Kenny and Ziggy's people. You know, that's one of the great delis. It's as good a deli as there is in the country. And there have always been rumors that the Kenny and Ziggy's folks are going to open up in Dallas. And the lady wasn't having anything of it. She was like, yeah, we hear that all the time too, but not happening. Look, I love a good deli, and it's a shame. You know, we did go to a good deli the other day that I need to take you to in, it's not a traditional Jewish deli, but Seeger's Deli in the Cedars has really good pastrami. They have a good Reuben that you would like. It's a good little deli. It's just not what you would consider like a New York style deli.
Yeah. Well, I would love that. I've not heard of Seegers. I'll have to check that out. All right, back to the Rangers. So here's the deal. Corey Seager didn't have a good night Tuesday night in that loss,
Right
but
after I pumped him up with Corey
he
Seager is
did.
back.
Corey Seager, he's back, baby, and then he takes an oper. But you're right. He is clearly even. I took the family out on Saturday night, and Evan was gracious enough to come down way down the first base line and sit with us for a little while at that game. But even when he was making outs, he's smoking the ball. Was hard hit, and that's all you care about. Is he hitting the ball hard? And he is. And so he's starting to play like he's supposed to. You know, of course, and you had a great stat in there about what the record is with him in the lineup and what the record is when he's not since the first of 2023. That's what, about a 25 game difference? Is that what that comes out to?
They were 20 games above 500 and 8 games below at the time that I did that. Yeah.
So that's a 28 game difference.
20 games above 500 with Seager in the lineup, 8 games below or 6 games below when he did not play.
See, that's a phenomenal difference to bank on a team. So it makes you wonder if Seager had been, hitting like this all along. Look, we're just going to say he's not going to be healthy. He's not going to play 140 or 50 games. If you're lucky if he plays 130, you're probably lucky now if he plays 120 or 110. So, but up till now, when he played, he was up until this season, he was really good. He's just like Jacob deGrom, right? And then this year happened. If he had been the player he's always been all year long when he was healthy, how much better would the Rangers record be right now?
For sure. I mean, he's a 6-7 win player when he's healthy and productive. He's a good defender. People don't give him enough credit for his defense, and he's a really dangerous hitter. In the column I wrote about Seager off of Monday night's game, the stat that I actually preferred was the numbers for Seager since he's come back versus the numbers against Yordan Alvarez, because when Seager came back, the Rangers were in Houston, and I had run some stuff by some Rangers people, and I was talking about, what's a good angle here on Seager, and with the team in Houston, they said, can he be our Yordan Alvarez? And well, I mean, the point was Yordan Alvarez alone has basically carried the Astros into contention. Can Seager do the same? And for the last month, at least until last night, Seager had been a 975 OPS guy since he returned. Before that, 0 for 4, 0 for 5 last night. And Alvarez had been a 921 OPS guy. And so the evidence suggested that very much he could be this club's Yordan Alvarez for the final 2 months.
Yeah, he could, as long as he stays healthy. Of course, Yordan Alvarez gets hurt too, and so I don't want to make it sound like that Seager's the only one who ever gets hurt. But they gotta make that happen. Let's talk a little bit here because I don't think we've given Zeke Duran nearly enough credit this year for the kind of season that he has had, especially now that they're throwing him out there in center field. It's like, come on. I don't know how much Zeke has ever played center field. He did look a little bit dizzy out there a couple of times, but what does that say about him? He is the MVP of this team, is he not?
I think the conversation for MVP of the team comes down to Zeke Duran and Jacob Latz. Those are the two guys who have performed above average from start of the year to the end. But Zeke has played every day, and Latz is a reliever. So I think that solves that for you. And to your point, He started on Sunday in center field against the lefty as the Rangers tried to load up with right-handed hitters. And it was his first career start in center field at the big league level. He had played 2 previous games there, as a mid-game insert, but he had never started there. But he's capable out there. I mean, his arm plays well in the outfield. There's no doubt about that. Running around and catching the ball and getting reads in center field is difficult for anybody. But he's played. He wasn't the outfielder who screwed up on Tuesday night. It was Wyatt Langford who made a bad throw to third base that allowed a run to score, and he didn't even need to throw the ball to third base. So, I'm all for Zeke Duran playing as much as possible wherever the Rangers need him. He's an everyday player now. The question is, does he have an everyday position? And he really doesn't. It'll be interesting if and when the Rangers get Josh Young back before the end of the season. If Josh goes to third base, does Zeke then play second base every day? Do the Rangers play Cody Freeman at second base? Or do they take Zeke and then move him to center field every day and potentially sit Evan Carter, who's still hitting under 200, and is not hitting against right-handers either? Would they consider doing that? But until you get Josh Young back, there's a position every day for Zeke, particularly against right-handers, and that's third base.
All right, so I don't know enough of Cody Freeman's background. Has he played much outfield?
Cody has played some outfield, but he's a stronger infielder than an outfielder. He's played great at third base, in the 2 games when he's played third, when Zeke was in center field, he's made a handful of great defensive plays already. He's a good defender, whether it's at second or whether it's at third, he can play either. And what Skip Schumacher is, because I asked him about this a couple days ago, there was a day where he played Duran at second and Freeman at third. And the idea was that the Rangers had a left-handed pitch, or the Rangers had a right-handed pitcher on the mound, and or forget who the pitcher was, but the thought was that there were a lot of left-handed hitters who were going to hit the ball on the ground to second base, and they still feel Duran is the better defender because he is an elite quality defender. And so that day they played Duran at second base, but ball ended up getting hit on the right side, on the left side to Freeman, and he made a couple of great plays. So they're both really good defenders. I think what it does give Skip Schumacher the opportunity is to kind of deploy them the way he thinks the majority of ground balls are going to go that day.
The point about Zeke's arm is a really good one. I noticed the other night there was a ground ball to third. He was in the grass, basically, and just boom, throw across the diamond, no sweat at all.
Yeah, he's got a great arm.
You got a terrific arm. And really, you're obviously not maximizing that when he's playing second base. Um, uh, to me, Josh Young is not a great third baseman. He's okay.
He's not this year he has been a terrible defensive third baseman.
Yeah. And so to me, it's worth over the winter thinking about going into the next season. What if there is one? What are we going to do here? How do we want to play these guys? Because the whole issue of Zeke playing center field, he's got a great arm, and that would be terrific to have somebody out there because they don't have a great arm in the outfield. And it would be good to have that. My issue with him playing center field is that, the wall, how does he negotiate that? Because do you want this guy who's your best player, who's not really familiar with it, crashing into a wall out there if he's going to be too aggressive? That would be my one issue with him playing that position out there. Otherwise, playing center field, the great thing is the ball doesn't tail on you as much as it does in left and right. And so you get more of a true read on it. And it's a little easier to play from that standpoint. It's just a matter of the mileage you get running down balls out there. But I love the idea of having his arm out there because Wyatt doesn't have a good arm. Nemo's arm's not real good anymore, and Evan Carter's arm is just average. So to have a guy like him out there, and plus you're just upgrading the position offensively tremendously, right?
Yeah, although I think you're overlooking the obvious possibility here, and that is that the Rangers revisit moving Seager this offseason, particularly if he has a good, strong, a good finish, and the Rangers decide that they've got to reallocate some money I think they could come back to the idea of trying to trade Corey. Now, obviously, he'd have a no trade at that point in time, but if you do trade Seager, you've got a built-in shortstop in Zeke Duran. I don't think center field would be their first option with him as a full-time player, but I think what he does present is he presents multiple options on wherever you get the best deals to fill multiple holes. He's got the ability to fill the hole that pops up.
Yeah, no question about that. Did you
I
have you
mean,
ever
right
looked at
now, Kevin, right now, he's your best option at second base. He's your best option at third base. He's at least your best option at least tied for your best option in center field. And he's no slouch defensively when he's got to replace Seager. So wherever that need is, that's where Zeke will play the majority of the time next year.
have you looked at his numbers when he's hitting at any of those positions? I wondered if maybe when he was playing shortstop, if that was kind of weighing him down a little bit.
This year, let's just take a quick look here while we're on. Why don't you continue to chatter aimlessly?
Okay, sure. I'll do that because that's frankly more pleasant than just talking to you. So if you
Let's see, Kevin. He has, as a second baseman, he's an 831 this year in 76 plate appearances. Third base 749, shortstop 783. So, I mean, no position where he's played regularly with any amount of regularity has he been a below average offensive player. So I mean, to your point of does it affect him negatively somewhere? No.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to, and it's just kind of a remarkable development, isn't it, this year? I'm thinking over the last, what, 5 years, if you were looking at position players and their development and the guys what you were either expecting of somebody or what you were, not expecting, I guess, is a way to put it about players. He might be the biggest surprise to me. I mean, there was a time, obviously, when they made the trade with the Yankees that he was supposed to be the highlight of that package, and he looked like it. He looked like it when they in 2023 when they won the World Series. But since then, he just looked like a guy who was overmatched for the most part. And now he's now he's made himself back into a guy who's to me looks like a potential all-star.
Yeah, his offensive numbers are almost identical to what he did. He's played a little bit more this year than he ended up playing in 23. He's played more than he's ever played, obviously. But his offensive numbers are right in line. He's a 271 hitter right now. He was a 276 in 23. He's a 775 OPS guy. This year he was a 768 in 23. 24 and 25, he didn't play a lot. I think he lost some confidence. Bruce Bochy lost some confidence in him. Um what he has done is he has cut down his strikeout rate and increased his walk rate. He is recognizing pitches more, and and that makes a big difference. And I also can't oversell, I think, the influence that having Alex Centrone on the offensive side has helped with Zeke. Zeke and Alex both kind of play it off like, hey, we just both speak Spanish, but that's such a huge thing when you can casually talk without having to put a whole lot of effort into things in it during at bats, between at bats, on the field. And I think it's instilled more confidence in Zeke in the coaching staff, and I think it has played out on the field.
You think they're talking during at bats?
Between, well, like there have been, not during at bats, but um, there'll be a pitching change made, and Zeke will come back to the rail, just like all hitters do, have a conversation with Alex. I know they talk after every at bat, and they will talk before at bat. So there's a really strong working relationship there. And credit to Justin Vealey for letting, for basically saying, hey, look, you can take this and run with it. It's not like everybody has to report up to me. You guys work well together. Continue to do that.
All right, last thing, I'm gonna do what you did, in the Cowboys section of the podcast. You asked the biggest question at the very end of the podcast when we're trying to get out. So, as we're taping this, the Rangers are a half game out of the West. lead. So are they going to be good enough to make the playoffs? Will they make the playoffs?
Will they make the playoffs? I'm going to say yes. I'm not sure I can back it up with a whole lot of evidence, but I do think that Seager, there's no player who could make as much impact relative to what he did over the first 140 games of the season. There's no player who can make as much impact on any one of the teams as Corey Seager. Now, I say that, Yordan Alvarez is still a monster, but he's been a monster all year, and the Astros haven't pulled away from anybody. Cal Raleigh has gotten a little bit hot in the last couple days. And let me tell you, I'm as worried about Seattle as I am with anybody, because their last 22 games are ridiculously easy. Easy being a relative term, because they play the A's, the Angels, and the Rockies for 16 of those 22 games. And both the Rangers and Astros have had trouble with those two teams. The other 6 games are against the Rangers and the Astros. So the Mariners have a real chance here. They have a great pitching staff. They concern me, but I just feel like this Rangers team has a 10 to 15 game run in it that can make some level of, for lack of a better term, separation. I mean, it's going to be close, and it may very well come down to the last weekend, but I do think that this team is going to make the playoffs by the hair of its neck.
Chinny chin chin. That's how that goes. Yeah, I'm gonna say no, just because of what you just said about the Mariners. I think the Mariners are gonna make a surge here. They're really good. They should have been good all along. If they don't make the playoffs, which at this point they are not a playoff team, they should fire everybody. It's been an abysmal year for that team. With what they did last year and the kind of starting pitching they have, and with the firepower. And you mentioned Kyle Raleigh, who hit 3 home runs in a game the other night. If he wakes up and the pitching goes back to what it's supposed to be, well, then the Mariners, I think, they won't run away with it, but they will jump ahead of both teams. But they've got to do some work too. So
Raleigh
this is
had
going to be
another
really
homer
interesting.
on Tuesday. He's hit 4 homers in the last 2 games. So
Yeah, something's going on there. So anyway. All right, and you said we're going to talk about Dolly Parton before we got out. Did you want to say something about Dolly?
yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say I haven't seen such a universal outpouring of love for a celebrity who has passed away in recent years as Dolly, and it just, you know, I like Dolly Parton. I don't know that I would consider myself a real big Dolly Parton fan of her music, but I liked her, and what I liked most about her was she just seemed to be a person who wanted to see the best in people, had kindness and caring, and it's just a really good lesson, right? That's all we're supposed to do, is just try and be kind, try and be caring, and try and see the best in other people.
I don't have any complaints with that. We went to her little place there in Missouri. It's the new
Ransom.
Branson. We went to her place in Branson. It's like a little rodeo thing there they have, and you go and they serve you dinner, and you're just packed in there like sardines, and you're watching this little Wild West show they had. It was very entertaining. Dolly wasn't part of that, but I did see Dolly. I was at the Cowboys game where she made an appearance there at halftime, so that was fun to see her there. It's just so crazy. You see tapes of her from June. She looked great. Looked like everything was terrific. And then, bang, 6 weeks later, she's gone. So I think that's part of the reason for the outpouring as well. But, it goes back to what you were just saying. Her popularity extended far beyond her singing ability, her songwriting, all the things that made her great and made her a, country music Hall of Famer, is the fact that what she stood for. And she helped a lot, and she helped with youth, and she took a lot of her fortune to help the less fortunate. And those kind of things are marks that go way beyond what you accomplish as a performer. And she did do that. So all the best to Dolly Parton in her memory. So that's going to do it for our podcast this week. We appreciate you coming on and listening to it. We hope you'll be back next week when we'll talk more about the Cowboys and what the situation is with the Rangers And also, we'll talk some college football next week. We'll know how TCU did against North Carolina in Ireland, of all places, to be playing a college football game. So we'll have all that on tap for you. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.